Sometimes we eat dinner, sometimes we don't. Afghan food crisis poses dilemma for the West 1 year after Taliban takeover. Kabul, Afghanistan CNN. At midday, Shakila Ramati starts a long walk from her home in the poor neighborhood in the hills above Kabul. Along the way, other women quietly join the journey. It will take them 3 hours to reach the city center, but each day they are driven by gnawing hunger and the need to feed their children. Their destination is a bakery, one of many in Kabul where crowds of women have started gathering in the late afternoon, patiently waiting for customers who might give them some bread. Sometimes we eat dinner, sometimes we don't, Ramati says. The situation has been bad for 3 years, but this last year was the worst. My husband tries to go to Iran to work, but he was deported. Women gather outside the bakery in Kabul, hoping for a handout from customers. The United Nations says that nearly half of the country faces acute hunger, according to a May report by an International Rescue Committee. 43% 43% of Afghanistan's population is living in less than 1 meal a day, with 90% of Afghans surveyed reporting food as their primary need. Their sobering statistics that encapsulated the first year back under Taliban rule, with the nation isolated and increasingly impoverished as the US and its allies left the country. They imposed the sanctions, froze $9 billion in central bank funds, and hurted the foreign aid that once constituted nearly 80% of Afghanistan's annual budget. Outside the foreign ministry, a large mural, one of the few written in English, trumpets the Taliban government official stance. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan wants positive and peaceful relationships with the world. Yet, after a year of governing, the Taliban has yet to be recognized by the single country in the world, with international funding still largely frozen. One of the main issues for Western countries has been the new government marginalization of minorities and women, which includes the de facto ban on secondary education for girls. Repeated promises from the Taliban to allow girls to return to school have yet to be honored. In late June, the Taliban's supreme leader Haibatullah Akhundzada pushed back against international pressure, saying Afghanistan would make its own rules. The vehicle checkpoint in Kabul. The fact of the matter remains that the United States is trying to find moral justifications for the collective punishment of the people of Afghanistan by freezing the assets and by levying sanctions on Afghanistan as a whole. Foreign Ministry spokesman Abdul Kahar Barki told CNN Saturday, I do not believe that any conditions should be stipulated on the release of funds that do not belong to me, that did not belong to the previous administration, did not belong to the government before it. This is the collective money of the people of Afghanistan. Amid fears of the fledged famine last winter, the US, through the World Bank, released over $1 billion in aid funding. That's an example of area where we are going to want to continue to have a pragmatic dialogue with the Taliban, a senior State Department official told CNN. We are going to talk to them about humanitarian aid access, about measures that we believe we believe can enhance the country's macroeconomic stability. But a growing chorus of the aid workers and economists say it's not enough and that the continued freeze of Afghanistan's funds is having the devastating effect. This is the message that no one wants to hear. Vicky Aken, the International Rescue Committee country director in Afghanistan, told CNN. These policies are putting women at risk here. In the name of the feminist policies, we are seeing women die of hunger. Shakila Ramati and the other women embark on the 3 hour walk from their home on the outskirts of Kabul to the city center. According to a senior State Department official, the U.S. is not close to the recapitalizing the Afghan central bank. Although there have been discussions on the matter, the official said that they still have deep concerns about the assets potentially being diverted to terrorism. We do not have confidence that the institution has the safeguard and monitoring in place to manage assets responsibly and inclusively. Needless to say, the Taliban shattering of Al Qaeda leader Ayman al Zawahiri reinforced the deep concerns we have long had regarding the diversion of funds to terrorist groups, they said. The Taliban refused to acknowledge that al Zawahiri, who was killed in the US drone strike earlier this month, was even in the capital, further complicating any effort to normalize the relations with the Taliban. At the market in Kabul, the stalls are groaning with fresh fruit and produce. The issue vendors say is that most people cannot afford them. The price of flour has doubled. The price of cooking oil has more than doubled, one vendor said. A few yards away, a young boy picks through a dumpster, collecting plastic waste to resell. The Taliban's de facto ban on girls' secondary education remains in place, so none of the coursework at the informal school will contribute towards the diploma. Humanitarian aid Humanitarian aid only buys time. It doesn't develop. It doesn't increase the incomes. It doesn't create the jobs, say Anthony Cordesman, Emeritus Chair in Strategy at the bipartisan research organization, the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. Cordesman warns that Afghanistan's overall economic decline didn't begin with the Taliban's return to power, and neither did the country's reliance on foreign aid. If we can find a way to negotiate the effective aid process where we know the money will go to the people, where it will be distributed broadly, where it will not simply support the Taliban government, then there is a negotiating initiative we should pursue as strongly as possible. But building a tissue of lies, the equivalent of the ad process based on the house of cards taking this money, which could go to the many other countries which can use ad effectively, makes no sense. As Kabul's night begin to cool and its days grow shorter, the fear among humanitarian workers is that this winter will be even worse than the last. It's not in American interest to see the economy implode, the senior State Department official said. We acknowledge that the humanitarian crisis remains serious and dire,